everyone, and thanks for joining us today as we talk with a few women executives in tech who are working from home with kids. It's not easy, and you should not have to choose between your family or career. But we're here to hear from Autumn Vaupel, COO of Beeline, Jennifer Dion, the Executive Director of Procurement Operations at Comcast, and Allison Robinson, CEO and founder of the Mom Project, as they discuss being a female executive and navigating that balance. So, to start us off, I'm gonna hit this off with Autumn. Now that working from home is becoming more long-term, how do you balance your work schedule with your kids' schedules? Is there more flexibility with the hours that you're working, or do you give yourself more leniency for taking a break during the day?
Yeah, the question everyone's struggling with, right? And I will say, I think a lot for me personally. I'm maybe fortunate to have children of an age that don't need my constant attention, so I will caveat it with that. And I know that's not the same for a lot of working moms, but I have a 9-year-old and a 15-year-old, and so, they do need me for different things, but I have been able to really, although I think I'm working more now than I probably ever worked, I feel like I'm working harder, and it's hard to separate work and home when you're in the same location, and there's so much activity going on. I do find that I have been able to take advantage of maybe a little more time that I wouldn't have before. And I think really, if I'm going to be really honest about it, I think the person who's benefited the most from that is me, because I'm taking more time for myself than I used to. I'm working out more than I did before, because I used to feel guilty leaving the office and then working out, because I felt like I was taking another hour away from my family. Or, in the mornings, I didn't want to go work out because I wanted to be there to help my daughter get ready for school and take her to school, because that was sort of precious time for me when I was home and not on the road. So I do think that I'm taking more time for myself, which is important. Everybody always tells us how important that is. And I think as working moms, we're really bad at taking care of ourselves. And so I've allowed myself a little more flexibility to, maybe go out for a walk in the middle of the day. And I never would do that in the past, and get some exercise, or maybe do some yoga or some meditation or whatever, just taking a little more time. And I've also tried to take advantage of moments with my kids where, when they were in school, now that summer's a little bit different because they're coming and going all the time, but when they were in school at home, we would sort of all come out of our rooms at the same time for lunch every day. And that was really a precious moment that I cherish, because I missed all those times with them pre-COVID. So I think for me, I'm trying to find the times when I can spend a little bit of time with my family, but then I'm also able to maybe work some hours that in the past I wouldn't have worked. So I think it's an interesting time, but there are ways to find some more balance in your life, and I'm trying to take advantage of it personally.
What about you, Jen? Do you feel like this new way of work has allowed you to reconnect with your family?
Yeah, I have to say, when this first started, very similar to Autumn, I feel like I'm working more hours than I probably did in the office. There was a discipline to need to leave to go get my kids, maybe to go to an activity or some kind of event. And because all of that disappeared overnight, I found myself really heads down very often and too frequent. And really what happened in my situation was, we were probably 4, maybe 5 weeks in. My daughter had come downstairs, and I looked at her and I knew something was wrong, and she just burst into tears. And she said, "This is so hard." And, it really, really hit me. And I thought, I have to do something. I have to make a change here. And I find those little moments like Autumn does, where, because she's not at cheerleading practice every night, we can go for a walk together, where maybe we wouldn't have done a walk together before that because we were always busy with other things. It is a very, very difficult discipline when you don't have to physically leave work to make yourself physically leave work when you're already there all day long, day in and day out. Having those moments together, but also keeping in mind my team and encouraging them to do similar items for themselves or similar types of situations. Making sure that I'm practicing what I preach. I'm telling them, give themselves a little bit of flexibility, make sure you're taking care of yourself, and then trying to bring that back to myself and definitely, you know, move my body, walk away from things, shut the laptop off. And now it's nicer. Things are opening up a little bit. Maybe go and meet up with a friend or do some shopping. But you know, it was tough at first. It really was. And I'm very similar to Autumn. My daughter's a little bit older. She's 11. My son is 20. He wanted nothing to do with being home. I was nothing but a distraction. So he went back to college and lived at his apartment there during this whole thing. But you know, challenge across the board.
Now, Allison, your kids are a little bit younger. How are you balancing your work life schedule?
I think for like myself, like so many parents, it's been a constant challenge. There was a couple weeks where my husband and I actually had COVID, and so that was particularly challenging, trying to figure out how we would work and look after the children, and totally without childcare. So I would say that was definitely a low point for us, but luckily we're healthy now. I would say it now feels to be a little bit more settled in. Working remote will become more permanent for us at our company through the end of the year. So trying to adjust to this new norm. I can say personally, I feel like I was listening to a podcast last night. It was the author of a book called Alchemy, Rory Sutherland. And he talked about a lot of the stressors of work, not actually being the work themselves, but it's the feeling of having to leave your family mid-afternoon on a Sunday or flight delays and not having sort of the cognitive load of all of those stressors, I feel like is actually allowing me to do some of my best work.
That's great. You shared insights on, how you've balanced your career and how at the Mom Project, you guys are definitely set up to support that kind of work-life balance. But what are your thoughts on what other companies can do regarding childcare and flexibility in a 4-day work week or remote work, time off, all of those things? What are organizations, what can they do?
Yeah, I'm excited to see all of the workplace experiments, if you will, happening across the country and globally right now. A couple that I would say I'm probably most excited about. One is the 4-day work week. Starting to see a lot of research around productivity gains around a 4-day work week. And I think for a lot of parents particularly, having that one extra day off to focus on family makes a really big difference. And of course, I'm excited to see the shift to a more remote workplace. I mentioned the Mom Project has gone remote through the end of the year. We're starting to see a lot of our customers, Facebook, Twitter, doing the same. So I think it's a really great opportunity for teams to kind of assess where flexibility makes sense across various departments and teams across their business. So looking forward to seeing this stay. I really think that this is more than a trend, and we'll see a lot of good come out of this that will result in a more inclusive workplace for all.
Jen, what do you think? What are your thoughts on that? I know, maybe not regarding childcare, but definitely that flexible work week or flexible work hours.
Well, and yeah, absolutely. So, giving that commitment and understanding of the flexibility, especially with some of folks on my team who are in the situation with the childcare, but rather than saying, you know what, take 4 hours during the day and then I need you to work the extra 4 hours at night after they go to bed, we've really had to take a look at some of our things and say, where can we reprioritize, and what is the so what if something doesn't get done, and how could we take a look at that so that folks were finding the balance? Because when you're watching a child all day, that is work. And to do 8 hours of that work and 8 hours of more work and really just helping each other out. I mean, it's about finding that right balance. Where can we shift gears? Where can we shift some prioritization? I just think that was key to it. And also just always reminding folks that there's an understanding when there's a dog barking in the background, when you don't want to be on a camera, when your kid is hanging all over you. There is an understanding there, and there's no need for an apology, and there's no need to try to offer an excuse. We understand, we get it, and it's okay.
Yeah, Autumn, I know, I think we've been on a couple of calls that are like that. What are your thoughts on all of that, and what you think organizations can be doing to kind of offer that flexible kind of mindset?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with both Jen and Allison. And I think what's really important, and one of the things we've tried to do at Beeline, is listen to our employees and really empathize with what they're going through. Everyone's situation is slightly different. So you can't say that there's one situation or one scenario or one even solution in a workplace that's going to work for everyone. And I think what you've got to do, what companies have to start doing, and I think what this scenario with COVID is really teaching companies, is to work with your employees, collaborate, identify opportunities where maybe, not every position is cut out for a flexible schedule, right? I can use examples in our organization where, we're a software company. We have people that need to be available to answer calls when customers are working, and we can't provide the same flexibility in that type of role maybe that we could in other types of roles. So I think it's really, really critical that organizations are having conversations with their employees. They're understanding the challenges their employees are going through personally. They're providing flexibility where they can, and they're having open dialogues and really trying to provide several different options, right? So like a 4-day work week, I think, is really interesting. I don't know that it would work for every part of our organization, because again, we've got to match up to some of what our customers, I don't think Jen would be too happy if I told her we weren't going to do any work for her on Fridays. But all joking aside, in reality, that could be a great solution for some parts of our organization. And there may be other solutions that will really help other employees. So I think it's not a one size fits all, but I think the dialogue is long overdue. And I agree with Allison. I really see COVID in this situation we're in, striking up conversations and opening up opportunities that were not there in the past, right? We were sort of stuck in our old mindsets that, you could never have certain employees go remote. That will never work. And now we've seen it works, right? And so I think it's removing some of those old excuses, or maybe some of those old sacred cows that we all hang on to. And it's opening up opportunities for companies to think differently. And I really encourage managers to also step back and think differently. What can you do in the future? Maybe you could take advantage of different talent that in the past you never would have considered, because you just held on to those beliefs that it'll never work, right? So I'm excited about what the future has to hold in terms of a different way of working.
I will mention very quickly on that, Autumn, that there's definitely there's some creative solutioning behind this as well, where some jobs you are not a work from home position. And I'll give you an example, a receptionist. But because we're maximizing what we can do at home right now and trying to find that prioritization, how can we utilize somebody who's in a situation like this? They didn't ask for it, it's temporary, but how can we use them to help fill in some of our gaps when we're trying to make some shifts and make things work for everybody across the board? So, creative solutioning has been pretty great, I think. And it's given more opportunities where maybe they wouldn't have had them, before that.
I love that example, because I think you also might find talent in your own organization that you could use in a different way, right? So I think that's a great example. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, ladies. So just really quickly before we hit the next question, I just wanted to let everybody know that you can use that chat function. It's down at the bottom of your screen if you want to use that and send any questions through. We are monitoring that. Questions or comments are very welcome. So moving on, Allison, so we're living in a moment in history pretty much unlike any in our respective lifetimes. There's unstable confluence of factors to trigger loss of a generation of progress in workplace equality. So while both women and men are anticipating staying in the workforce at similar levels for the next 3 months, I've actually got a statistic here from WorkLabs. Women are 85% more likely to anticipate leaving their employer within a year. So what is the Mom Project's plan to address the disproportionate effect of COVID-19 pertaining to women and moms?
Yeah, so this is something that we're talking a lot about. It's a major inflection moment. As you said, women are much more likely to leave the workforce, and that statistic is even more grim when we look at ethnic minorities. So we're thinking a lot about how do we retain more women in the workplace, both inside the walls of the Mom Project and externally with our customers. I think, as we think about what are the key levers to drive retention, we know some of them are workplace structure related, again, 4-hour work weeks, acknowledging that many parents will not have childcare come August, September, and getting creative with schedules, as many parents will continue to have to do full-time childcare throughout the fall. So we're working on different sort of job share arrangements, reduced work weeks, to really help make sure that those people don't have to make the difficult decision to leave the workforce. We were also looking at how can we help remove the cognitive load. We know that everybody is working so much right now. So we're looking at we've recently launched a couple of community programs for the moms and the dads on our platform, one being Rally, which pairs mentors with mentees who need that career boost. Another program that we're just piloting right now is called Standby, which gives moms and dads within our company and a couple of others in beta an opportunity to unload some of those just tasks. Maybe they need some help with errands, etc. So we're trying to get really creative to uncover solutions that just will help the reality that we're all in, where we're all juggling so much.
I'm on mute. We had a question come in quickly about that 4-day work week, and I think that fits here nicely on, like that creative solutioning like you guys were talking about. So with a 4-day work week, what do you find tends to work best? Monday through Thursday, or Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, with a day in between?
Yeah, great question. I've seen it work best with 4 dedicated days rather than the split across the 5 days. I don't have data necessarily to back that up, but that's what I've seen work the best.
Great. So Jen, I wanted to see if you had any thoughts on that last question, what your organization is planning or trying to think about as we get into the disproportionate effects of COVID-19.
So, I think that Comcast, my opinion is that they've done an excellent job in, keeping people informed and keeping us aware of what they're looking at some type of phased, approach of cycling folks back in, what type of different remote accesses we can continue doing even long-term in the future. I think a lot of it still remains to be seen, and it's such a gray area, right, where we don't really know, what September is going to look like. We have a little bit of the experience behind us with how it was handled. From my perspective, my point of view, I feel like we've found our place in a very, solid environment, if you will, that we'll be able to continue progressing as we have all along. But I do think that Comcast is very, very in tune to everything. They're keeping it. We have a very dedicated page within our internal portals that we can look at every day and see what the company's thinking about. Haven't heard the 4-day work week. Got text from my team during this call saying they would love it. They said, Autumn, go ahead, do the 4-day.
I was going to say, we'll have to coordinate our days, Jen.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
That is great. Autumn, I wanted to give this next question to you. What advice do you have for women who have taken a career pause?
Yeah, I personally took a career pause, which I don't even know if a lot of people know, but I did take 18 months off when my son was born. So that was a while ago, 15 years ago. And so I've been there. I mean, I know 18 months may not be as long as a lot of people have taken, but it seemed like an eternity to be out of the workplace at the time. And it was scary going back into the workplace. But I think what women need to remember is that your skills don't disappear just because you stayed home with your child for a few years. And you have something to offer to the workplace. And I think it's really important to be confident in your own abilities and your knowledge and your skills. And I think using, I would say the one really important advice, and honestly, it's no different than somebody who hasn't left the workforce who wants to make a career change. I think using your network is critical to getting your foot in the door. And once you're able to, start to get your foot in the door, I think it's really important to be confident in yourself and your abilities and what you showcase what you have to offer an organization. And in my particular case, at the time I was a consultant on the road. Before I had my son, I knew there was no way I was going to be traveling 100% with a small child at home. And I knew I wasn't going to go back into that exact same type of career, but I also felt like I had a lot of skills that I could offer in that arena. And so I decided to try my hand at moving into a management role, managing a team of consultants. And I felt at the time maybe I was taking a step backward from what I really wanted to do, but I wanted to get myself back in there. And I knew once I had an opportunity, I could prove myself and show that I could add value and I could take my career in different directions. And so I can honestly say it didn't hinder my ability to grow my career at all. And it worked out well for me. But I think really it's a lot of it has to do with believing in yourself and going for it and not apologizing. There's nothing wrong with taking time off to be with your kids. And it doesn't mean that you don't have something important to offer back into the workplace.
Allison, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, Roger, what Autumn said, I think you said it really well. I see so many women when they're coming back to the workforce after time off in the paid labor force, very apologetically. And I just wish that they would be more confident. You're amazing. And the precious time that you've spent at home caring for your children is raising the next generation. So I hope that we can inspire you to really be confident. I also think like a really great resume helps, just having that to be able to articulate your prior experience, education. At the Mom Project, we have a resume rev that will do all of that for you. And I would say getting really clear on the role that you want to come back to. Like so many moms maybe were previously teachers or lawyers, but that's not what gets them excited as they think about their next act. So think big, and the more specific you can be and say, I want to be a software engineer or I want to be a lawyer in this industry, it makes it so much easier to activate your networks. So then you're not saying, can you introduce me to interesting people? You're saying, can you introduce me to somebody in technology? And so I just find that being really focused in your outreach is really helpful. And of course, come to the Mom Project. Helping moms get back to the work is really our core ethos. So we would love to support you in that journey.
One of the things you said, Allison, struck me too. I think another important thing to do is reach out to that network and ask them for references. Mm-hmm. Because it's great to be able to walk in the door and say, here are people who believe in me enough to write a letter or to send an email. So, don't be shy about asking people.
Absolutely. And I think an investment in a career coach, or we have a free service through the Mom Project called Rally, where we can connect you one-to-one for free to really help you build up that confidence and help coach you on things like negotiating and understanding your fair market value. I think that's really wise investment.
I think too, and when we spoke about our own self-care as, working today, it also goes back to that self-care and that continual learning and maintenance of yourself while you are raising, children at home. There's, I think it's a fantastic opportunity for you to continue keeping yourself up to speed with some things that are changing based on a specific industry that you may be in. Having conversations with friends who maybe are in workplaces. How are the dynamics changing? How are things changing? So that you go back in with some knowledge of what to expect, right? You can't, if you wake up 10 years from now, everything is different. And you have to have some sense of what has changed in the workplace. And, we don't use fax machines anymore. We're going to use a scan, something like that. But I think it's important to keep yourself, abreast of all of the different changes that are happening. And if you have continual learning credits that you can take or some type of Harvard Mentor Manager online, you should take advantage of those opportunities.
Mm-hmm. We've got one last question here. And I think it goes back to kind of what you're saying. It's a little bit more specific. What advice, and Allison, I'll pitch this to you first. What advice do you have for trying to enter back into the workforce during this time when childcare is going to affect my availability so much? During my interviews, when asked about my availability, I'm afraid to fully share it because I don't want to get passed up for someone who's single with no kids.
Yeah, I think it's important to be honest and transparent around what you can give. I think all strong relationships are built on trust and honesty. So I would encourage you to be forthcoming around what that can be so you can set expectations with prospective employers appropriately. And I think if they're the right company that you ultimately want to be with, that there'll be a mutual understanding.
I agree.
And Autumn, to your point earlier, kind of that, what roles are you suited for? Do you want to expand on that in this situation?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Allison. I think you have to be honest because it's eventually going to, you don't want to land the job and then have it be a problem or an issue, right? You don't want it to be the first thing that happens after. But I think it's also really important to take a hard look at what are the type of roles you're applying for, and maybe it's time to, Allison's point, maybe it's time to take a career change. Maybe you don't go back into the exact type of role you had before or the same field because it just is going to be too challenging, and that the expectations of that role just don't match up with what you're able to give at this time. It does not devalue what you're able to give or do. And I think there's plenty of opportunities out there that can provide a lot of flexibility that are great options. So I think it's important to really think long and hard about exactly what you want to do and focus on finding that balance there that's going to be a good fit for you, but also something that's feasible, right? That, I think the last thing in the world you want to do is start a new career and not feel good about what you're able to give. We're so bad about beating up on ourselves as women as it is. And so I think, it would be a mistake to put yourself in a position where you feel bad that you're not able to provide value the way you may want to.
Jen, do you have anything to add here in the last minute?
No, exactly what Allison and Autumn said. It's, in any relationship, whether it's a work relationship, a personal relationship, it is built on that trust and honesty. And you have to ask yourself the question, do you really want to work for a company who doesn't want to hire you and offer you that flexibility if you need it? But you also have to keep in mind, if you're trying to get a job that's going to require you to travel 100% of the time and you can only do it 50% of the time, they're going to find out, right away anyway. I had a boss one time who told me a funny story. She was asked in an interview if she knew how to use a 10 key. This is very, very long time ago. And she said, of course I do. And she went in day one and had no idea how to use a 10 key, and it caught up to her pretty fast, but she thought, how hard could it be? So you have to just put it out there and let them know up front, and they can make a decision from there. You both get to make the decision, right?
That's right. Well, thank you, ladies, and thank you, everybody, for joining us today. That was a great, great session. We hope to see you guys on our next webinar, wherever that may be, whenever that may be. And thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Everyone. Bye.